and welcome to the MuniFinanceGuy podcast. I'm Mark Moses, MuniFinanceGuy, and today I want to talk about artificial intelligence and municipal government. And this certainly won't be the last time this discussion comes up, but I think there's so much going on in so many different areas. It's worth taking an inventory of the direction things are going. And I think I can provide some insight based on my experience in implementing technology in local government that will help sort things out. And I think the direction things are going is a little bit predictable, and we can project out and see what this is going to lead to. With AI, local government is about to become dramatically more productive. And yet, no local governments I know really have a standard for deciding which of its activities deserve the application of technology, deserve to be made more productive. And so we're going to see how the gain lands, the productivity gain lands on the activities that nobody could previously justify. And so what's going on out there in the world? I just attended a webinar with several dozen finance directors, and when they were asked, everyone was claiming to be using AI. So it's kind of from an administrative point of view, it's a feather in your cap in a city or local jurisdiction to be able to claim that you're using AI. Now, nobody really quantified in terms of the productivity results and how it was saving the money. The focus was really on operationally how it made their jobs easier. So even though the claims are probably a little exaggerated, because that's what local agencies tend to do, they tend to exaggerate the claims. The implementation really takes a lot more cooperation across departments. And those things are slower than what I think is being reported. But just the same, the deployment is coming. In terms of what's out there, there are a couple of teachers' unions that have just negotiated with their school districts that AI will not upset any of the jobs of the current teachers and their workload. And any serious AI implementations have to be approved by the teachers' unions. And it's not just that. That's really just codifying what the governor of California said about AI will not be used to terminate public sector jobs or even change the work, change the government work. And we have other mayors across the state and other people just quick to be on the defensive in terms of, no, don't worry, this will not result in fewer jobs, no layoffs, no change of work. So this starts to paint a picture of, well, if you have these productivity improvements and you're not going to change the work, then where do these gains land? And for the gain to go to the taxpayer, the agency would have to say, oh, great, we're able to fulfill our mission. So our productivity here can result in savings that will go back to the taxpayer. But we've already put one impediment in place by saying, but we're not going to change the work or lay off people, so that can't be a real source of savings. And we haven't challenged the unbounded mission. And I have direct experience with this when I was working with technology implementation, when there was a lot of automation going on throughout the country, as desktop computing became more prominent, as better applications for accounting and administrative processes, permitting became more available. There was quite a bit in the way of technology that was implemented by cities. And not one of these that I saw resulted in any reduction in staff. And that's really understandable if you've listened to my past podcasts, I talk about the unbounded missions that local government embraces, and even special districts and even school districts expand beyond their core charge and their core scopes. So when you have an unbounded mission, there's no end to the work. And so not only do cities not staff in a way, we would make an improvement and estimate that, oh, this will save a quarter of a head count. But cities don't staff that way. So there's no way to recover a quarter of a head count. And even if you wanted to, just structurally, it's very fixed and very difficult. There's no variable workforce that you can just pull back on the way it's done in private industry. So as a practical matter, it's difficult to execute savings, and no one's motivated to do it because everybody's in a mindset of there's already too much to do. So the work gets absorbed. And so where does the work get absorbed? Where does the productivity manifest? If it doesn't manifest in changing much the way work is done, if it doesn't provide a rebate back to taxpayers and make the cost of operating the city less expensive, where does it go? Well, it goes to the next things in line. And when I say the next things in line, just a reminder on just the causality, the order of causality here. The mission is what sets the stage and as an expression of the purpose for the goals of the organization. And since most cities have very broad missions that talk about enhancing the environment for the locally, or uh, provide services to the community that will help the community flourish. Very broad missions that restrict nothing. Then the goals that come out of those come out unregulated. There's no way to say, oh, this isn't within the proper scope of the organization because it's already adapted such a broad scope. And so now you've opened the door to the activities that help fulfill the goals. And those activities can take the form of costs or exercise of the organization's power. And so one thing AI has done is it's made it easier for code enforcement to find violations. They've got cameras on trucks that drive around the city. And so now they're able to spot violations that they never were able to enforce before. And I've seen this happen where a little productivity gain or a little technology gain, all of a sudden the city's enforcing something that it never enforced for years and never really took seriously, but was just kind of on the books because at the time it was politically advantageous to promote uh, such a such a local rule, that people would get uncomfortable with, oh wait, we didn't really need for that to be enforced, and yet it's on the books. Well, now AI makes it very easy to go after all of the things that have never been contemplated. I know when a multi-family residence smoking ordinance was put in place, the council knew that staff didn't have the ability to enforce, or a plastic utensil ban implemented when staff said, there's nobody calling for this, there's no real justification of this, but it was really grandstanding on the part of the council members who were promoting it. Now, with technology, there are ways to go in invasively and enforce all these things. So one way this will manifest, and they'll call it unintended consequences, but what it really comes down to is not owning your own municipal code and not really standing behind what rules you put out there and allowing your budget to regulate it, or allowing the lack of capacity of your organization to implement. Those will all of a sudden be implemented. And then there's another way mission will creep. One of the limiting factors in a city's taking on activity has been with grants has been the ability to write the grants, to write the grant proposals. And I know there is always a little friction around, do we have enough justification to hire a grant coordinator, uh, a grant administrator to apply for all these grants? Well, that's made so much easier. And so cities will be able to apply for grants left and right. Their their mission will be affected, their scope of activity will be affected by the grants that they're able to procure. And now you have and then once those grants expire, you'll have built this expectation that these things need to continue, and many of those wind up falling back on the general fund. So they come into the scope through the grant door when it seems innocent, and then become additional financial burdens on the on the residents. And then finally, just the ability to administer activities and get involved in commercial or charitable activities is enhanced through the productivity tools. And so that will also manifest. And that will carry with it, there'll be a lower threshold for getting involved in these things because it won't have the old kind of restrictions of, oh, this is going to cost too much to administer, or this is going to be too complicated to figure out how this would work. When AI figures all that out, you'll have more city involvement, more local government involvement in commercial and charitable activities, crowding out the innovation, the capital investment, and the abilities of the private sector to positively engage in these areas. So that's where I see the productivity being channeled. It'll be channeled to scope. There will be more exercise of powers because the city's powers will be easier to execute. It'll be easier to find the violators of obscure parts of the code, and greater scope of activity in the organization as it takes on more. And when you look at what a city is for, and this kind of gets back to the correct order of business, from my perspective, you have to start with what is the city for? What is the proper function? And if you go back and believe the proper function is to protect the residents and business owners and their property, to protect their rights so that they can flourish, then you've got a standard by which you can apply decisions about, should the organization get involved in this? Is this within the proper scope or not? As a practical matter, because the missions are so broad and because the legal environment has tolerated it, there's the approved scope is is really an unbounded scope, because there truly are the powers for these councils to adopt whatever they want to adopt. Uh, but that doesn't give them any mechanism to manage the organization effectively, because they've taken on, by implication, an unbounded scope. And now the relevance of the AI is, budget used to be a regulator. Uh, Budget used to be almost a common excuse. But people would say, "Oh, we can't do that. We don't have the budget," when it was something they never supported, never wanted to do, never would do, but they were able to use budget as an excuse. And so now that excuse is taken away with the productivity gains. And so things that the organization never would have tolerated before, never would have thought to do before, the technology is unleashing. And so the the answer, I believe, or the direction cities should take, is the same things that when it comes to other productivity improvements, whether it's applying technology or looking at how to contract work or looking at transparency or prioritizing budget, you need a standard. You need to go back to, what is the organization for? What would delimit the activity so we can actually make decisions about what's properly inside the scope or not? And then when you've decided what the organization should be doing, Then you apply the technology to that. But we see the pitfall here of just applying the technology to everything at large is going to get the least favorable result, least favorable for the taxpayers who won't be able to get that money back, who still won't be able to afford the incremental kind of things that they could afford if they were to get that back through their taxes. And then they'll also suffer as residents because of the crowding out of commercial and voluntary charitable activity. So again, we need to go back to the causal chain and not think that we can make improvements without challenging the scope, without reviewing the scope, without reviewing the proper mission of the city. Thank you for listening. I'm Mark Moses, Muni Finance Guy. See you next time.